Welcome to the Ad Nauseam Podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 75 of the Ad Nauseam Podcast. My name is Jeff Winkle. I'm here in the vomitorium, here with my good friend, Dr. David Noe. How you feeling tonight, Dave?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you.
Pretty well?
Pretty well.
Yeah, not great?
Non male, Ago.
Okay, non male. All right.
That's
all
right.
Okay.
It's cold.
Yeah.
The cold won't seem to leave. It lingers.
It lingers, right. But I think
the dinner guest, the party goer that won't go away.
Won't go away.
You show them the door, you hand them their coat, but
and
they stay.
Still hang around.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah, they fake like they can't find their wallet or
Right.
keys. Yeah.
My wallet's gone, they say.
So you're feeling that's what winter is for you right now?
It's kind of wearing me down.
Yeah.
Here we are, February 25, 26. Mm-hmm. Can't we get a leap year or something and just skip over the rest of the winter?
I hear you. This is the time of year where I'm kind of frantically, obsessively checking like the weather report.
I am starting to also.
I did see that about a week from now we're supposed to be breaking to the 60s.
No,
So
you're making that up.
I'm not making it up.
60s?
Yeah, 60s. Yeah.
I thought it was supposed to be smarch.
Well, we've been going through a little bit of smarch lately.
Out like a leg of lamb, in like a lion. Isn't that the saying?
Yeah,
something like
exactly
that.
right. So you've had it. You want the leg of lamb, or you?
No, I don't know.
You don't
Just keep it in a snowbank. I am so tired of the winter. It's dragging me down.
Yeah. I hear you.
But what can cheer me up?
Yes.
Ready for a nice segue?
Yes.
The classics.
The classics. That's what
Yeah.
we're talking about tonight, right?
What this podcast concerns.
Right. And we're talking about dead guys tonight.
Seems to be your thing. Liminality and death.
I do. I'm fascinated by both of those things.
Memento mori. Don't forget to die.
Exactly.
Right?
Right. So not so much liminality tonight, but a lot of kind of stories about last moments of notable Greeks and Romans,
Right?
And the myths that gather up around them. Yeah. All right, Dave. We got to get to our shout out.
Yes. And I'm excited about this one. Why are we laughing?
I don't know.
Okay.
Who do we got?
We have a good friend of mine, Dr. Joan Christ.
Joan Christ. All right.
Yeah. And Joan says, I teach Latin at an urban core charter school in Northwest Indiana.
Very cool.
She says, I have been an addict of Latin per diem.
An addict?
Yeah, I didn't know we had any addicts.
Sounds like she needs some help.
Which helped me to pass my teaching licensure exam for the past year and a half.
Fantastic.
She says, I used to be a professor of Catholic theology.
Wow.
She actually has a doctorate in theology from Notre Dame.
Man.
She's too modest to say that, but I can brag on my
That's
friend
impressive.
a little bit.
Fantastic, yeah.
She says, but I am being slowly converted to Protestantism by Theodore Beza.
Really?
Yeah.
Beza's she's leading her down this path?
Yes, well, Theodore Beza is a fantastic theologian, in my opinion, and
Yeah.
a great Latinist as well. She says, I love listening to Ad Nauseam on my walks to and from my workplace, and I try to buy things from your sponsors at least once per month.
Man, Joan.
Isn't that sweet?
That's very sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah, she says, you guys always give me something I can use in my classes.
Fantastic. That's really great.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like I paid her to say these
Yeah,
things, which I did not.
So this, have you met Joan?
No, just online.
Just online, yeah.
We studied some Latin together. Very good Latin student. Very, very good Latinist.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Joan, for listening and for
Yeah.
doing all that other stuff, too. That's great.
Yes, we're so thankful to have listeners like you out there. All right, Jeff, so as we get into tonight's episode, what exactly are we going to give the listener and the viewer?
We're going to talk about these legends that surround a number of notable Greeks and Romans, legends that surround their deaths.
Okay.
And not necessarily stories that we should take to be, accurate or exact or historical.
Canonical, maybe?
Canonical.
Right.
And look at them more kind of through the lens of myth. And,
Okay.
I don't think that the Greeks were unique in this, but, famous death stories about notable people often seem to kind of come together as critiques of or kind of comments on their lives.
I see.
These notable people kind of die in a fitting way that matches their lives.
Yes. Well, let me riff on that for a moment,
Please.
if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
At the end of the story of, Croesus in Herodotus?
Yeah.
The famous quote about you don't know whether someone has lived well until you see if they die well.
Right.
Repeated at the end of the Oedipus Rex, right? The chorus's comment on Oedipus.
Good. Yeah.
And you can have what appears to be a successful life, and then right at the very end, if you die in some ignominious fashion, your life was not successful.
Right. That's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
For the Greeks, the best death was in battle speared in the front. Because if you're speared in the back,
That means you're running for it.
You're running away.
Yeah.
Second best was to die among your friends. So you sit on the porch in your rocker with a glass of lemonade, maybe a little vodka in there.
Yeah.
And surrounded by your kids and grandkids. That's
a good way to go.
It is a good way to go.
Yeah.
How about you? How do you want to go?
I haven't given a lot of thought.
No?
Right, no.
For a guy that thinks about death so much.
I haven't thought about my own death. If I told you my father-in-law, his plan is that he's just simply going to wander out into the desert. When he feels it's time, he's going to wander out and says, "Don't bother come looking for me."
That's terrible.
I know, it's awful, isn't it?
Wander out into the desert.
Yes.
That's terrible.
I know. But that's his plan. That's how he wants to go.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know how serious he is about that.
Yeah.
But
How about me? How do I want to die?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Gee, it's going to be one of these nights.
It is not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Dave, how do you want to die?
I want to you can just fall asleep on a pile of books.
Really?
Yeah, because that's where I usually am anyway.
Just on a pile?
That's right. And then just put me in the casket and throw in all the books I haven't finished reading.
Yeah.
Close it up so I'll have the time to, get it done, hopefully.
You're kind of like an Egyptian pharaoh. You're gonna try to take it with you.
I suppose. Throw in some pencils and a good composition notebook because I don't want to forget all this stuff. But we have some opening quotes.
We do.
Some famous last words of famous individuals that you have assembled for us.
I've assembled, right. And then these, I did not do a ton of research on these. But again, one of these nights.
What? Come on.
But I found a number of quotes that I
These are
think
great.
that I have no idea if these are accurate. But again, that's kind of the point of what we're talking about. Does the quote kind of fit the person?
The person's character and everything we know about them.
Right.
So can we take turns with these? I mean, you did the hard work, but I want some of the glory.
Yeah, sure. Why don't you go first?
Okay, so these are supposedly the famous last words of Elvis Presley.
Yes.
Can you do an Elvis voice?
I got a few I could do here.
Okay.
I'm not going to attempt an Elvis.
All right.
Yeah.
So apparently Elvis Presley, the last thing he said was, "I'm going to the bathroom to read."
Right. And do you know the story of Elvis's death?
I think it was tragic, wasn't it?
Well, yeah.
He's making peanut butter sandwiches and
He actually he climbed the stairs in Graceland into the bathroom. He went, and that's where he was found.
he didn't come out.
No, he did not.
That guy had an amazing voice in his early career, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Just an incredible.
Right. He had a terrible manager, though. That Colonel Tom Parker kind of really screwed him over.
And by the time he was very old, the voice was wrecked.
Yeah, and he was only 42 when he died.
Yes, wow.
But he did not age. He aged very quickly in those last years. Yes, right. Another one. So Raphael, the notable Renaissance painter.
Yes,
Right?
the third of the three greats.
Yes, probably most famous for his the School of Athens.
Yes, that is incredible. You've been to his tomb, right?
I have, in the Pantheon.
It's in the Pantheon. He's ensconced in the Pantheon. What a way to go!
Right. I think he also died quite young. I think he was in his 30s.
That's incredible.
But apparently his last word was happy.
That's phenomenal.
That's a good way to go. Right there. Yep.
I want my last word to be meh.
Reacting to the book that's in your hand.
Yeah, indifferent. No, maybe reacting to the book that's in my hand. I use all these little colored flags, to mark the spot.
I've seen them. I've seen them in your books.
I don't want to pick the book up and forget where I was.
Right. They have bookmarks for that. You don't have to stick things to them.
But a bookmark is so imprecise. You could be anywhere on the page.
So you're putting it right by the paragraph.
Sometimes to the very word. Because I want to just pick up naturally.
Yeah.
So my last word will probably be, flag, something like that. Should we go on?
Yeah, who's next here?
The next is the inimitable Frank Sinatra.
Yes, inimitable, but can you do a Sinatra for us?
It's okay.
All right.
It's all right, but I'm not going to do it.
All right.
I did sing on one episode, remember?
You did? Yeah.
I sang some Roy Orbison.
That's right.
And it was ill-received.
What? No, oh, really? I'm sorry about
So here we go.
Yep.
Frank Sinatra's last words are, "I'm losing it."
I'm losing it. Now that one sounds, I believe that
sounds
one.
like him. He was referring to his wallet, though. Okay, next.
This one I don't think is correct.
No, is it George Orwell?
Orwell, yeah. George. So I've seen this quote a lot, attributed to everyone from Socrates to Bon Jovi.
Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Yeah, exactly right. Mm-hmm. So apparently these were not his last spoken words, but his last written words.
Well, they're very fitting to him, I would say.
Yeah.
You an Orwell fan?
I am an Orwell fan. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find him fascinating.
Prescient.
Very prescient, yeah.
And we talked about him.
Did we?
Call back to the episode, what was it? Top 9 Reasons to Study the Classics.
Oh, did we talk about Orwell? How did
Yes,
Orwell
we
come up
did.
in that?
Because we had a quote about how he hated Latin.
Oh, that's right.
And he said that you can't study classics. What is it? The study of classics is impossible without corporal discipline. Because Because he grew up in this hoity-toity English boarding school and apparently got whooped too much. Right.
Another guy that died too young.
What did he say?
Well, he wrote, apparently, at 50, everyone has the face he deserves. Right. So, are you 50 yet? Are you 50?
It's a very personal question.
It is. Well, let's get personal.
No.
You're not.
But you are.
I am. I'm 51.
You're 51.
So apparently I have the face that I deserve. Right.
And it's a jovial one, let me say.
Thank you.
Very jovial.
Right. Okay, what's next? Who's this?
Buddy Rich.
Yes, famous drummer.
Okay, so for whom did Buddy drum?
He had his own big band.
Okay.
And he was famously kind of a tyrant in the way that he...
Really?
Yes, you can YouTube this famous rant that he went against his musicians on the bus. It's very profane.
He didn't die with Valens and...
No.
With the big bomber, the big bomber. What was his name?
The Big Bopper.
Okay, sorry.
And Buddy Holly. No,
right.
No, he lived after that.
Okay,
but he was famously irascible.
My kind of guy.
Yeah.
So this is what he says: as he was being prepped for surgery, a nurse asked Mr. Rich, "Is there anything you can't take?" Rich replied, "Yeah, country music."
That's nice.
I ran down country western music just this week.
You did?
Oh, it was great.
What happened?
Some student said, if I told you that I wrote a song about you, would you like it? I said, not if you wrote it as country western.
So you're on the same page as Buddy here.
I'm with him. Right.
All right.
Next, a very favorite individual of mine.
Yes, and I actually found this because I was thinking of you.
Because you know I'm a Marxist.
Yes, you are a Groucho Marxist.
That's right.
And as am I. And so he apparently said on his deathbed, "This is no way to live." And I really hope that's true.
I hope so too.
That's perfect.
Then Alfred Hitchcock, right? That's the Hitchcock you have here?
Yes.
Okay, exactly. Alfred Hitchcock said, "One never knows the ending. One has to die to know exactly what happens after death, although Catholics have their hopes."
Right. No, I don't buy this. I think one never knows the ending. He's a filmmaker. He's a storyteller. It's a little too on the nose.
I see what you're saying.
But if you say, I can do a little bit of a Hitchcock. One never knows the ending. One has to die to know exactly what happens after death. That's something like that.
That's very nice. Yeah. Mishka, put some applause in here for our friend Jeff, because that's the only applause he's going to get.
Oh man. And finally, we have Winston Churchill.
Yes. Are you a fan of Winston?
I am. I'm a great admirer of Winston.
Yes, I am too.
Warts and all.
It's incredible.
Yep.
So this is what he said: "I'm bored with it all."
Yes. Isn't that great?
Does that sound like Churchill?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
He just kind of had it by the end, right? He lived a long time.
Yes, he did. Yep. Yes, he did. An important individual.
All right, Dave, let's get into this.
Okay, so we're going to start out with...
We're going to start with some famous Greeks, famous dead Greeks.
Yes, that's right.
And then some famous dead Romans.
Incredible.
Right.
And the first one up is Aeschylus, or Aeschylus, if you want to.
What do you prefer?
I'm an Aeschylus guy.
I'm an Aeschylus guy, too.
The Aeschylus sounds a little bit pretentious, may I say?
Right. I did once have a student ask me about this guy, Aeschylus.
Aeschylus?
Yeah.
What you do to the Aeschylus?
I have a soft spot in my heart for that pronunciation.
Okay.
So this comes. So our first three here are the three great tragedians: Aeschylus, Euripides, and Sophocles.
That's right.
These death stories come from a Roman author by the name of Valerius Maximus, who I admit I have never read.
Well, there were other Valeriuses, Valerii, but he was the Maximus.
He was the biggest of them all, right? Exactly. Yeah. So he was the largest.
Yes.
Right.
No, that's not it.
No.
Now I see you have the order here.
Yeah.
Is Aeschylus, Euripides, and Sophocles, but this is the order of their demise, right? Because Sophocles is actually a little bit older. This is my typical pedant move, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Sophocles is a little bit older than Euripides.
He is.
But he outlived him.
Just by a couple of months. But
yes.
Yeah, right.
Which the listener can find out in the episode...
Which I banned.
Brekekekeks Coax.
That's right, exactly.
The one about the frogs.
Man, you have a really good memory about their episodes.
Well,
I can't remember anything.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
But people may be asking, why do they keep referencing old episodes? Why indeed, Dr. Winkle?
Well, we want them to go back and listen to
Correct.
these. Yes.
Especially the duds.
Right. So Valerius,
yes,
the greatest,
the biggest of the Valerii.
Yeah, he recorded a lot of these kind of famous death stories. He wrote writing in the 1st century, and this comes from a book of Facta et Dicta Memorabilia, the memorable deeds and words.
Yes, right.
You want to read a little Latin for us?
I would love to.
Yes.
Yeah. So here goes. Aeschyli verdro poeta excessus quem modum non voluntaria sic propter novitatem casus referendus in Sicilia monibus urbis in qua morabatur egressus aprico in loco resedit. superquem aquila testudinem ferdrens elusa splendora capitis, erdrat enim capillis vacuum perinde atque lapide eam in licet ut fractae carno escaretur, eoque ictu ordrigo et principium fortioris tragoidiae extinctum est.
Yes.
That's great stuff.
Isn't it great stuff?
I don't care for this line too much. Erdrat enim capillis vacuum. Which, listener, you may know, he had what? He was carrying, let's see, his head was glorious, but it was devoid of hair.
Devoid of hair. Vacuum capillus. Yes, right. Yeah, it's a little bit too close to home for me.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So this is a translation of that. This is from a Samuel Speed. This is a 17th century translation, but which has been updated.
So the guy is Samuel Speed.
Yeah,
is his name?
Sounds like a superhero, like an alter ego of a superhero.
A Flash, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. So at what tempo are you going to read it?
Sam Speed. I'm going to actually do it very measured.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's how Sam would want it.
All right.
The death of Aeschylus, though not voluntary, may however be related for its oddness. For he walked out of the town where he lived and sat down in a convenient place. There an eagle bearing a tortoise, deceived by the baldness of his head, as they are, eagles often are.
Oh man, you got to wear a hard hat when you're walking around my neighborhood.
Crazy. The eagle let fall the tortoise upon him as if he were a rock, to break it so that it might get at the flesh. And by that blow, the beginning of a more perfect tragedy was stifled at its origin. So death by flying turtle.
By that blow.
By that blow.
Stifled the origin of a more perfect tragedy?
Yes. So death by flying turtle.
What does that mean? He was about to write a great tragedy?
I've read that as well, as that one of the reasons he went outside was to compose his next tragedy.
Yeah, that's a great place for tragedy.
He's sitting in a convenient place.
Yeah, I wonder what that means.
Yeah. But that he was killed by the flying turtle before he could compose it. Yeah.
So this is a common way for eagle to open up the tortoise's body?
I don't know a lot about eagles and tortoises, but it seems logical to me.
Pick it up from a great height and drop it on a rock and split it open, and there's the fresh turtley meat?
Yeah, the eagle can't get through the tough shell with just his beak, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, so Pliny actually talks about this in his natural history, and he's more interested in kind of the species of bird and tortoise. But he relates the added detail that Aeschylus is said to have. There was an oracle that he's going to be killed by a falling object.
So Pliny receives an oracle that Pliny will be killed by the falling object.
No, he's talking about Aeschylus.
Oh, Aeschylus got this oracle.
Right. So Pliny's talking about this story because he wants to talk about the eagle and the
Got
tortoise.
it.
Right.
So maybe Aeschylus had been watching Looney Tunes or something?
Something like that.
And he knows that if you walk down the street, you might
an anvil
or a piano fall on you.
Right.
This happens all the time.
Right. So he's staying inside. Well, apparently, I mean, from what I take it, that Aeschylus is he goes outside because he thinks it's more likely for something to fall on his head if he's inside.
Well, that's kind of mixed.
I don't know.
Were the shelves affixed carefully to the walls is my question.
Maybe there's shoddy workmanship.
Mrs. Aeschylus hang a pan up wrong or something like that?
Like that. So he went outside thinking he'd be safer out there. But of course, the rule of oracles and prophecies has to come true.
Yeah, right? And the harder you work to avoid them, the more you fulfill them and complete them.
Right. So at any rate, hit by the turtle.
Okay. So he was in Sicily. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
He was in Sicily visiting the famous tyrant there, right?
Exactly.
Who liked to patronize the arts.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. Now, is there any truth to this story? It seems so bizarre that it would be, to my mind, highly unlikely.
Yes, but you were saying in last week's episode, you can't make this stuff up about Alcibiades.
True. It's so weird that maybe that's evidence that it is true.
Yeah, it has the stamp of plausibility.
Right. Now, I've also heard kind of the interpretation is that the lyre on which tragic music would be composed would be made from the tortoise shell.
That's right. That's how Hermes first invented it.
Right. And so some think that it's one of these ironic Greek deaths. That by being killed by the turtle, he's being killed by tragedy itself.
Oh, that's funny.
Right.
So if we apply that to other sort of genres, what would a philosopher be killed by?
Good question.
Yeah.
Somebody.
A flawed premise fell on his head or something like that?
Yeah. I think a philosopher would be fairly safe from flying objects.
If you've read the Gorgias, Polus would probably put you to death with boredom.
Yeah, there you go. Bored to death.
Yes, that's
what
right.
I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. So
But the epitaph.
The epitaph, right? So there's also another famous story that as he was dying, or maybe before he died, he was asked, "What do you want on your tombstone?"
Right.
All
It's
he
like, what do you want on your pizza? Same kind of thing. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And he said, basically mentioned that I fought at Marathon, and nothing about his tragic career, nothing about his poetry. And that's really striking.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've seen that epitaph. Maybe in a future episode, we'll deal with it, and it's lovely, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in person. I'm saying there's a recording of it in literature. Right?
Yeah, right.
It says something like, I stoutly resisted the long-haired Persians at Marathon. But of course, nobody knows him for that. Everyone knows him as great literary artist.
Right. But incredible that he was there on that day in 490, fighting in that underdog force.
And
Miltiades,
there on that day in 456 when he got tortoised on the head.
Right.
Okay, should we move on to Euripides?
Yeah, we got to get moving on. So Euripides, so again, Valerius, here we'll just dive into the translation.
Okay.
He says, more unpleasant was the demise of Euripides, for returning to the house where he was staying in Macedonia after dining with King Archelaus. He was torn to pieces by dogs.
Ooh.
And that was a fate too cruel for so great a genius.
Yes, it's kind of a fate too cruel for anybody, isn't it?
It's awful.
To
Isn't
be
it
torn
terrible?
to pieces by dogs.
Right.
Happened to Actaeon, right?
Yes. Yep.
In an episode entitled Ovidian Vignettes, remember?
Oh, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. Torn apart by his own dogs.
By his own dogs. And I think it's in that one. And Ovid gives the long list of Barker and Bayer and Pointer and Squisher and all those
That's
different
right.
dog names.
All the people pulling Santa's sleigh.
That's right.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So, yeah, we have a similar kind of scene here. So, I can't remember if we've talked about this detail on the show, but Euripides, at the end of his life, he goes up to Macedon.
Right.
And
because that's where the money is.
that's where the money is. I mean, there's some stories that he got fed up with the way he was received at the Dionysia. He wasn't winning all the contests. And
His
such.
Athenian fellow citizens didn't appreciate his genius.
Right. And so he goes up there, and this is where he's torn apart by dogs. And the story goes on that his son goes up there to settle his father's estate, finds the unpublished text of the Bacchae.
Oh, I didn't know this story.
Takes it back to Athens, and it's put on, and it wins first prize. And so
Where did you read this? New York Post or?
it sounds very tabloid.
It does
right?
sound very tabloidy.
Right. But I believe that is the tradition. And so
I didn't know that about the Bacchae.
He wins one of his few first prizes posthumously.
That's too bad.
But here too, kind of a fitting death. It reminds us of what happens to Pentheus in the Bacchae. He's torn apart by the Bacchantes.
That's right, by his sister and his mother. Because he's spying on the rights of Dionysus. So a man can't do that. So he's torn limb from limb, just like Euripides.
So Euripides is torn apart by dogs as a way that's kind of a fitting, kind of odd, haunting echo of his last play.
Yes. Right. So this is maybe, something the listeners are going to get bored of, but here's another meta reference.
Please.
The Alcestis episodes.
Yes. What? Yes. Yeah. So why are we talking about these now?
Euripides.
Oh, yeah. We did. Yeah. Those were good episodes. People should go back. No, they weren't.
No,
okay.
But we did have Diane Svarensen, right? Yes, because those episodes were about Euripides' Alcestis.
Yes, one of my favorite plays.
Yeah, very good one.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, let's move on. So Sophocles.
Sophocles.
The third of the big three.
Yes. Died the same year, but a little bit after Euripides.
Right.
A fact we know from
our episode on the frogs.
That's right, Aristophanes.
So here, his death is one version of his death is recorded by Diodorus in his library. A little Greek here. What do you say, Dave?
I'd love it.
Please.
Yeah. Okay, just drop a quarter in. Here we go. Perida tonaton chronon et eleutes Sophocles hosaphilu, poietes tragodion ete biosas en anekonta nikas deachon acto kaideca, fasi de tonandra tuton ten escaten tragodian, esaga gonta kai nekesanta chara peripasen, an uperbleto dihain, oops, did I get that right? Yes, dihain kai teleutesai.
Excellent. Wonderfully done.
Thanks.
Yes. So the translation of that comes from one with a very Harry Potterian name.
Oh, really?
C.H. Oldfather.
Oldfather,
yeah.
Very famous classicist.
Yes. So go something like this.
Do you know whose son he was?
Of the
older father.
I felt where that was going.
Okay.
At the same time, Sophocles, the son of Sophocles, the writer of tragedies, died at the age of 90 years. After he had won the prize 18 times.
And this prize?
At the Dionysia.
Yeah, the first prize for great tragedy.
Yes.
And he won 18 times.
Yes, a record, unsurpassed.
It's like, what's his name at the Oscars, right? I'm going to have to be more specific.
Yes, you are, exactly. I was thinking Michael Phelps, the swimmer.
Oh, that's a better analogy than the one I was
Who
thinking.
are you thinking of?
You know, the great filmmaker, Spielberg.
Spielberg. Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
And we are told of this man that when he presented his last tragedy and won the prize, he was filled with insuperable jubilation, which was also the cause of his death. So he was so excited, he croaks on the spot.
Yeah, I imagine writing that in his death certificate. Cause of death, insuperable jubilation.
Right.
He was jubilous, but he couldn't super it. It was just insuperable.
Yep. Yeah. So, and I think this is, as a fitting death, Sophocles of the big three, I think, was the most revered.
Yes.
And certainly in his own lifetime was revered. So for him to die at the excitement of a victory seems very fitting for a man that the Athenians apparently loved to love. Right.
If the listener wants to follow up on this thread, they can go check out H.J. Rose's Handbook of Greek Literature, which develops this, right? That Aeschylus, is the grim monotheist. Euripides is kind of the modern psychologist. Sophocles hits the sweet spots.
Yes.
So human, so sympathetic and such.
Right, exactly. And also in terms of kind of his style as
Right.
well, right? The bombastic nature of Aeschylus, the more kind of gritty, pedestrian prose of and poetry of Euripides. He's, again, right in the middle.
Yeah, the sweet spot.
Yep. There are other traditions about his death. I've also run across that he at 90 years old, they bring the guy out onto stage, the Dionysian. They ask him to perform the Antigone on his own.
So they're the singing and everything, right?
Everything. He's doing all the parts. He's a one-man band.
Right. So like the big bomber, that's how he died.
The big oh, man, the big bomber.
Sorry.
Yeah.
This one, though, is my favorite.
Which one?
The next one that you're going to read.
Well, they died choking on an unripe grape?
Yes.
And that strikes me as maybe closer to the truth.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess an unripe grape isn't soft, so it won't conform.
It's too hard.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If it's soft, it's if it's ripe, it's soft. And you eventually choke it down. But
yeah, but unripe, it's like you're swallowing a stone.
Yeah, a golf ball. I thought grapes in antiquity were kind of tiny though, because they didn't have Miracle Grow and other things.
That's true. Yeah. So I think there might be something else going on here. I've also heard this interpreted as kind of a revenge of Dionysus. He's too. Sophocles is too good at his job.
Oh, so Nemesis
is
going to get him his hubris for winning 18 times in a row. You want to win 18 times in a row, says Dionysus. Here, choke on a grape.
Yeah, choke on a grape. Right. So we see that, of course, in hero stories there are very few happy endings, and the idea that completing a heroic task is by default hubristic.
These are ancient hero stories.
Yes.
Contemporary hero stories.
No, they go the other way.
They go the other way.
Happily ever after. That's Disney.
Yeah. Possibly one of the worst movies ever.
Which one?
The Patriot.
I never watched those.
With Mel Gibson?
I never watched.
Terrible.
That. Is it bad?
Yes. I'm hopefully hereby offending a large swath of our audience. There are many things about the film that are good, except right at the end, spoiler alert, he has to decide between principle and safety. And of course, he chooses principle because that's what a hero does. But then he gets everything else too.
Gotcha. Now this this takes place during the American Revolutionary War.
Yes, in the Battle of Yorktown, right at the end. So there's some gripping, interesting elements. Yeah. He's got to sacrifice family for principle, but then he gets everything else he wants.
Does he scream the word freedom?
Well, see, there's a nice contrast because in Braveheart, you actually have the choice between self-preservation and self-sacrifice, and once you make that choice, you don't get to go back.
Yeah.
But in Patriot, he goes back.
He goes back.
You don't care for it.
That does sound awful. Right.
Now you don't need to watch it.
No. So who's next up here?
Milo of Croton.
Right. Croton.
Yes. How to liven up a salad.
That was one of his particular special powers.
Was it?
Yes, right.
6th century BC, so that'd be the 600s?
The 5th century, the 500s. Yeah, right. So if our listeners are unfamiliar who Milo of the Croton was,
so Croton is a city in southern Italy.
It is.
It's a Greek colony.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly right. So he was a famed wrestler and athletic champion whose kind of feats of strength gave rise to many, many legends. He was a military hero. He's often depicted carrying a full-grown bull on his shoulders. He is said to have kind of burst a headband that was around, those fillets around his forehead just by flexing the veins in his forehead. Boom! Pop that off. Isn't that awesome?
Is it plausible? So you went through, I'm going to get a little personal here.
Yeah.
You went through an exercise stage.
I did, brief.
Was it about 10 years ago?
Yeah.
You and Mrs. Winkle, you were hitting the gym religiously.
This was actually longer. It was before children came.
Okay.
Did you burst? The went to pot.
Did you burst any headbands with your forehead veins?
I never got to that phase, right?
Sounds like the headband may be a little too tight if you can
maybe
burst it with a vein.
But I think if you can do that in terms of exercise, you're done.
Yeah,
you're
done.
Right. So here's a quote from Pausanias, who wrote his famous Guide to Greece, right? The travelogue.
Jeffrey Henderson is a translator.
Yes, and this is a section from Pausanias, Book 6. He says, it is further stated that Milo carried his own statue into the altus. His feats with the pomegranate and the quoit are also remembered by tradition. He would grasp a pomegranate so firmly that nobody could wrest it from him by force, yet he did not damage it by pressure. Now, how do you balance that trick? You kind of hold.
So you've got it in your
Nobody can take it out.
fist. Nobody can take it out.
But you can't, you're not squishing it.
That's tremendous control.
Yes.
And at the end of it, you could just make a glass of juice, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, refreshing. And this last part, I don't know, this makes me laugh. He would stand upon a greased quoit. Are you familiar with a quoit?
I don't know what a quoit is.
A quoit is like an iron.
Is it 1/4 of a gallon?
A quoit is like an iron ring that would be like and they throw it like horseshoes, that kind of thing. So he would stand on it, he'd grease up a quoit, right? And he would make fools of those who charged him and tried to push him from the quoit. So he's balancing on this greased quoit, and people come up to try to knock him off, and he can't do
it.
It's
like a King of the Hill kind of. Did you play that as a kid?
Yes, I did. King of the Mountain, we call it.
King of the Mountain. I played King of the Hill. Yeah. Usually on snow.
Yes.
Giant snowbanks, someone at the top, and you try to dislodge him.
It could get brutal.
It's a very violent kind of game.
It is.
So much fun as a kid.
Oh, it's great.
Dislodge that person, kneecap him,
It's great. I can picture Milo on top of that snow mountain.
That's right.
On a greased quoit.
On a greased quoit.
So, and holding a pomegranate.
Now, this is the same Milo, that Cicero uses in his speech in defense of Milo, the Roman of the same name.
He talks about this guy?
Yes, this is in the Pro Melone. And the whole argument is, my client has the same name as this famous Greek athlete, Milo. And then he tells all these stories about Milo. This famous Greek athlete was amazing, therefore my client is innocent.
Really?
Pretty much.
The other side didn't object?
Oh, they had some objections, but wouldn't you want to listen to Cicero tell stories?
Of course, about
Yeah. Doesn't matter if it's relevant.
Oh, man.
I was trying to think, if you ever get charged with anything and I'm hired in your defense, I got to think of some famous Jeffreys.
Oh, man.
But I'm not coming up with any.
Well, there's that infamous. You don't want to talk about like Jeffrey Epstein.
No, all the bad ones. All I can think.
Right. Yeah. Jeff Bridges, maybe.
You think he's a good one?
The Big Lebowski.
Okay.
Yeah. Dave, read this passage from Valerius that.
Don't mind if I do.
That tells us kind of how he died.
Is this Valerius Minimus or Maximus?
This is Maximus. This is the big guy.
All right.
Once again.
Milo, or Milon of Croton, as he was traveling, saw an oak tree that had been cleft with wedges. Trusting in his strength, he went up to the oak and attempted with his hands to pull one part from the other. But when the wedges fell out, the oak closed again and trapped him there till, despite all the palms and victories he had won, the wild beasts came and devoured him.
Isn't that awful?
I think I prefer the turtle, honestly.
Just
one clean whop on the top of your bald pate.
He gets Venus flytrapped.
In this oak, this collapsing oak.
Right.
And then the animals come up and nibble his toes away.
It's awful.
It is really bad.
So there too, I thought, the oak tree, it may be associated with Zeus. Is it some kind of divine
punishment?
Divine nemesis, kind of, again, punishing him for being so successful?
I stay away from oak trees.
You do in general?
Yes.
Why?
The grain is too open. I think the wood's kind of played out. Interesting thing about walnut, though, if we're talking about people being stuck in things.
Yeah.
From my rural background, walnut trees are so soft that if there's a fence next to a walnut tree, or if you take a glass bottle and set it in the crotch of a walnut tree, and come back 5 years later, the walnut tree will have closed around it completely.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
So sometimes
it absorbs it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like this guy Milo. So sometimes when people are, milling walnut trees, they're putting them through a mill, they got to be really careful because the saw will come up with all kinds of stuff that's in there.
And so an oak tree would not do that.
No, it's very, very different.
Interesting, man. Wow. I'm amazed by your botanical knowledge.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I'm dendrological.
Yeah. Well, hey, we gotta pause now.
We do. We're not going to read this last one about Milo from Pausanias?
I guess we can. It's just kind of more of the same.
Okay.
But I'll read it.
Let's read this.
Right.
I'd like this.
They say that he, Milo, was killed by wild beasts. The story has it that he came across, in the land of Crotona, a tree trunk that was drying up. Wedges were inserted to keep the trunk apart. Milo, in his pride, thrust his hands into the trunk. The wedges slipped, and Milo was held fast by the trunk until the wolves, here the very specific the beast, a beast that roves in vast packs in the land of Crotona, made him their prey.
Oh, that's awful.
So he's devoured by wolves.
It's kind of Ovidian, but Ovid doesn't deal with Milo because he's a historical character.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any mention, I could be wrong, I'd love to be corrected, really, in the Metamorphoses, any mention of Milo. But it's an Ovidian kind of death.
It is a very Ovidian kind of death, right? So we got Euripides torn apart by dogs, wolves nibbling at Milo. We got falling
Aeschylus,
turtles. Right?
What is it? Insuperable jubilation.
Yeah, we got that. We got grapes.
We got grapes.
Yeah.
Speaking of swallowable grapes, let's go to our ads.
Let's do it.
This episode is brought to you by Hackett Publishing.
Hackett Publishing.
With offices in Cambridge, Massachusetts and Indianapolis, Indiana, Hackett has been bringing fantastic works to a broad audience for 50 years.
That's right. I love their translations. I have them on my shelves. I have a translation of Ovid in my car.
We know that,
yes,
right? In case of emergency,
Emergency,
pull this out of your glove box.
That's right, yeah.
I was unearthing some books from my basement because I have some new shelves, for which I'm very grateful, very pleased with these shelves. And I was coming across Hackett book after Hackett book, and it's like meeting old friends.
Exactly. So listeners, do yourself a favor. Check out hackettpublishing.com.
Correct.
Find the text that you want.
Stroll down the virtual aisles.
Yes. It's unbelievable wealth to be found there. Find what you want. Put it in your little grocery satchel. And Baguette. Yes. Right.
I'd like to see them put a... I'm going to interrupt you again.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them put a book in a baguette.
You would like to see that? That'd be a difficult...
That's a trick, isn't it?
Like hollowing out the bread?
Like standing on a quoit.
Exactly. Where's Milo when you need him?
That's right. So they put it in there, and then what happens?
And then they put in their coupon code, which is AN2022.
Right.
And they will get 20% off anything they order and free shipping.
That's phenomenal. I don't know anybody who gives 20% off and free shipping.
It's a huge deal.
It's incredible. Check it out. This episode is also brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Ratio Coffee, the brainchild, the beverage child, you might say.
Yes.
Can I say that?
Beverage child? It's a little strange, but yeah.
It's more than a little strange. Of Mark Helweg, good friend and devotee of the classics.
And his crack commando coffee team out there in Portland?
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
He said to me something like, a crack team and Portland don't really go together. But they have put together, I don't know if that's a narcotics reference, but
that's how I took it.
Okay. He's put together an amazing team that assembles fantastic coffee machines. I've got the 8. You've got the 6.
I've got the 6. Yep. Mine's I got the stainless steel finish.
Have you tried to stain it?
I've tried. I've
squirted it with a little water.
My children have thrown all manner of things against it, but it
Nothing
remains.
sticks.
It's stainless.
Like Italian pasta against the wall.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Al dente.
Right.
Yeah. No, perfect cup of coffee every single morning. Yep.
What are the stages one must go through to obtain one of these perfect cups of coffee?
Well, it starts with the bloom.
The bloom,
which is the off gassing stage.
Okay. You notice I'm not even smiling.
And then what's next?
After the bloom comes the brew.
The brew.
It's a bloom with a brew, as Hitchcock would say.
Exactly right.
That's an old joke, but notice we haven't said scorch pad or brackish tang yet.
Not even yet. No, exactly. And then at the third stage, it's ready.
What happens in the brew stage, Jeff?
Well, that's where the water goes through the Fibonacci head.
Oh, Fibonacci, bringing him back.
And pours over the grounds and into the weighty carafe.
It's an automatic pour-over machine.
Yes, it is.
So all of the delicious excellence of pour-over coffee, but none of the weight.
Yes.
And none of the expense and the inconvenience of driving to the brewery, beanery, bakery thing.
There's no point in doing that.
Okay. Yep. So if the customer, did I say, are they customers already?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
They go to ratiocoffee.com and what do?
Well, they can pick out either the ratio 6 or the ratio 8. Type in the coupon code. I was going to say coffee code.
Right.
Coupon code ANCO.
ANCO.
And they will get, how much is it?
15% off.
15% off. Yeah.
So you really need to check it out and join the Ratio way.
This episode of Ad Nauseam also brought to you by the Gold River Trading Company. One of our newer sponsors.
Yes, so proud to be with them. So pleased.
Yes, and purveyors of excellent tea.
Very good tea. So they're located in Dallas, Texas. And I think part of their mission, if I can just kind of summarize it a little bit, is to try to kind of regain some market share among Americans for this quite revered beverage. Americans are generally coffee drinkers.
That's right.
But it's not always how it has been. Americans used to drink a lot of tea after they came over from the mother
They
country.
used to chuck it into the harbor.
They did that too.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't want to do that with this tea.
No way. This
you
is
want to
good
chuck
stuff.
it into your cup.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I had recently a cup of their green tea. You like green tea?
I like green tea. Any color, basically.
Really?
I'm fond of. I don't really check out the color when I drink the tea. But I don't know if green refers to the color. It's something about the leaves.
The leaves, right.
No dust particles, no fannings.
No fannings at all.
No fannings.
Right. So I like their green. I like their black.
I love the cacao.
The cacao.
Very relaxing. No caffeine in that, but it's stimulating because it's warm and the smell is fantastic.
Yes,
Really enjoy it.
great stuff. So what can the listener do here?
Well, they need to go to goldriverco.com, goldriverco.com. Check out the amazing website. Check out the different products. Put them in the shopping basket or the box of some kind, and then enter this code, ANTEA, to up the ante.
Up the ante, ad nauseum tea.
That's right. And they will get 10% off any order.
Any order at all?
Any order of tea.
Any order.
Check it out.
Check it
You're
out.
supposed to say check it out.
Check
Winkle,
it out.
I was
Sorry.
teeing you up for the check it out.
Check it out.
There we go. All right, Jeff, as we get back into it this evening, we're going to pivot
Yes.
from dead Greeks to dead Romans.
Dead Romans, right? And we're starting off with a big one, a
Yes.
firecracker here. Virgil himself.
Perhaps my favorite.
Your favorite dead Roman.
Do you remember you asked me a couple of weeks ago whether whom I would most like to meet, I think?
Yeah.
Assuming it would be Cicero.
Yes.
And I said, no, I think it'd have to be Virgil.
I was shocked by that.
Were you really shocked?
I was surprised because I was thinking Cicero would have to be the man.
Well, he's made a great impact on my life. Cicero has, but Virgil perhaps more so.
Yeah.
Because Virgil's poetic imagination is just so overwhelming.
Agreed.
The way he strings together adjectives and gets at human psychology. I'm reading book 4 right now with someone close to me. And just the analysis of Dido's life and death, it's really moving.
It is. We should probably do an episode on him.
We'll have to do many.
Yes.
Maybe we should do as many as we did with the Odyssey.
Let's not get crazy. Right.
So let's hear about Virgil. What's going on?
Right. So again, because we're talking about the end of Virgil.
Yes.
So he, the story goes is that he traveled to Greece.
Okay.
And he was gonna camp out there. And
Camp out?
Well, not literally camp out. He was gonna
Like a little gas stove and
and a little tent, a lean-to.
a Sub-Zero sleeping bag. I can't imagine Virgil in a sleeping bag.
I imagine he had some fairly fancy digs to go to.
You think so?
Yeah.
He was supported by Augustus.
Right. So he was going there to revise the Aeneid.
Okay.
Going to finish it up.
And he was born in 70.
Born in 70, so this is 19, so he's 52,
Yeah.
51 and 52 when this took place.
About your age, actually.
Yeah, exactly, right. He meets with Augustus in Athens, and for whatever reason decides to head home, and he catches a fever while near Megara, which is not far from Athens.
Which is in the Peloponnesus, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
A big city.
Yeah. And he crosses over to Italy and gets to Brundisium, down there by the heel,
Right.
and dies.
Yeah, so he leaves probably from Dyrrhachium, I think, which is in Epirus.
Yeah,
I don't know, but that's the general
That seems to be the
launching
logical
point.
jumping off point, right?
to get over to Brundisium,
Right.
and he dies there from the fever.
He does. So I have a lengthy quote here from a translation from Suetonius' Life of Virgil.
Okay.
Translator J.C. Rolfe.
Rolfe.
And maybe we can kind of go back and forth on this.
I'd love this,
All right.
and I think someone's probably going to let us know what the JC stands for.
I think somebody out there in listening
Someone
land will tell us.
is going to tell us the JC in JC Rolfe is probably the same as in JC Penney, I'd imagine.
Which I have no idea. James Charles?
I don't know either, but it's got to be interesting. So Suetonius, Life of Virgil, right? This is from his work De Viris Illustribus on famous men,
Yes.
I think. And
Yes.
one of them is Virgil. This is number 35 or section 35.
Right.
Do you want to start it out and I'll pick it up halfway through?
Yep. So in the 52nd year of his age, wishing to give the final touch to the Aeneid, he determined to go away to Greece and Asia after devoting 3 entire years to the sole work of improving his poem, and to give up the rest of his life wholly to philosophy. But having begun his journey, and at Athens meeting Augustus, who was on his way back to Rome from the Orient, he resolved not to part from the emperor, and even to return with him. But in the course of a visit to the neighboring town of Megara, in a very hot sun, he was taken with a fever, and added to his disorder by continuing his journey. Hence, on his arrival at Brundisium, he he was considerably worse and died there on the 11th day before the calends of October in the consulship of Gnaeus Sentius and Quintus Lucretius.
Wait a minute.
Yep.
I thought I was reading some of this.
Well, there's a lot more to go here.
Okay,
Yes, yeah.
all right. So can I interrupt again,
Please, yep.
How did he get a fever in the very hot sun?
That was, that crossed my mind as I read that. You tend not to associate getting, maybe it's sunstroke and
I don't know.
calling it a fever?
You know who John Stossel is?
Yes, I do.
Many, many years ago, I watched a special with John Stossel.
Yeah.
He has a very interesting way of speaking. I wonder if we could ever get him on the podcast.
Yeah, I like his voice. I do too. Yeah.
Anyway, he tested this principle that a cold weather leads to illness. And I'll never forget, he's laying on a block of ice. Back when journalism was real.
Yes.
You've got, what's his name, Geraldo trying to unlock Al Capone's vault.
Oh, yeah, I remember that very well.
So John Stossel's laying on a block of ice with a fan blowing on him for 4 or 5 hours.
He was trying to catch a cold.
He was trying to say that, look, there really is no scientific
correlation.
connection between being cold and getting the cold virus.
Yeah.
And I guess it was kind of in Stosselian terms, it was case closed.
That's well. So maybe yeah. You
Virgil should have known, though, I suppose.
I guess so.
Son, he was taken with a fever. Okay.
Yep. So this was September 21, 19 BC. He dies. His ashes were taken to Naples and laid to rest on the Via Putiolana, less than 2 miles from the city, in a tomb for which he himself composed this couplet. Dave, would you pick it up there?
I will, but the couplet's in English.
I know.
Which, it's okay, but it's not probably going to sound very poetic as I read it.
I know.
My other question is, how did he compose the couplet to go on his own tomb? He must have known death was approaching.
I guess so. Maybe that's he's
fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds something like this. Mantua gave me the light, Calabria slew me, now holds me. Parthenope, I have sung shepherds, the country, and wars.
So he's born in Mantua.
Died in Calabria,
and now
which is the region in which Brundisium is.
Yes,
right?
and then buried in Parthenope.
Right. Why is it called Parthenope?
So there's other connections here. So Parthenope is apparently one of the names of the sirens from the Odyssey. And she is said to, when Odysseus sails past and isn't, driven mad or kills himself, she drowns herself. And she's said to have kind of washed up on shore at Naples. Virgil, in his Georgics, claims that he's nourished by Parthenope. So there's a connection to the geography and a connection to Virgil himself. So that's what the Parthenope refers to.
Have you composed an epitaph for Winkle?
No, I haven't thought about my death at all. Remember?
Yeah, for a guy that thinks about liminality and death so much.
Yeah,
surprisingly.
Is it strange?
It's surprisingly outwardly focused.
Well, it is outwardly focused.
Would you like me to write you an epitaph?
No, please.
Okay.
No.
Wow, that was a quick no. All right.
That was very short. You want to keep reading here? Please?
Yes.
Yeah.
So to continue with Suetonius on the death of Virgil, he, that is Virgil, named as his heirs Valerius Proculus, his half-brother, to 1/2 of his estate, Augustus to 1/4, Maecenas to 1/12. Oh no, fractions coming up. The rest he left, how much would that be? So, what is it? To his half-brother, 1/2 of his estate.
It's very confusing.
Yeah, to Augustus 1/4, so we got a fourth left. To Maecenas 1/12, so we've got 3. No, what's...
Please, no more math.
Okay.
Yeah.
The rest he left to Lucius Verus and Plotius Tucca, who revised the Aeneid after his death by order of Augustus. With regard to this matter, we have the following verses of Sulpicius of Carthage.
We want to read these two. Again, it's not in Latin.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Virgil had bidden these songs by swift flame be turned into ashes, songs which sang of thy fates, Phrygia's leader renowned. Varius and Tucca forbade, and thou too, greatest of Caesars, adding your veto to theirs, Latium's story preserved. All but twice in the flames, unhappy Pergamum perished. Troy on a second pyre narrowly failed of her doom. Ah, that's clever.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Right.
Explain those last 2 lines a little bit, will you, please? Because
so there's
kind of ran through them.
This famous anecdote that Virgil, realizing he was not long for this world, he instructs that the Aeneid be burned. Right? It's not finished. It's not revised, and so he would rather it be torched.
Can you imagine that?
Unbelievable, right? So I'm so glad that his friends and Augustus did not follow these particular
Augustus
orders.
just kind of intervened and said, nah, it's good enough for me.
Right. And thank goodness he did.
So all but twice in the flames, unhappy Pergamum perished. So all but twice. So Troy the city burned once.
Yes.
The story of Troy almost burned a second time.
Yes.
That's it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. So continuing with the translation, he had arranged, that being Virgil, with Varius before leaving Italy that if anything befell him, his friend should burn the Aeneid, but Varius had emphatically declared that he would do no such thing. Therefore, in his mortal illness, Virgil constantly called for his book boxes, intending to burn the poem himself. But when no one brought them to him, he made no specific request about the matter, but left his writings jointly to the above-mentioned Varius and to Tucca.
That must have been so frustrating.
Oh, man.
When I'm sitting in the chair and I ask one of my kids, can you bring me a soda or something?
Yeah.
It's very frustrating when I don't get the soda.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that ever happen to you?
Every day. Every day.
Are you quite imperious with your children? I'm sure you're not.
I'm not. But I request a soda every once in a while.
Yeah, okay, could you give me a soda?
I get the side eye. Yeah.
Imagine if you're Virgil, bring me those book boxes so I can destroy the Aeneid, and nobody will listen to him.
Very depressing.
Be so frustrating.
It is. So he gives this to Varius and to Tucca with the stipulation that they should publish nothing which he himself would not have given to the world. However, Varius published the Aeneid at Augustus's request, making only a few slight corrections, and even leaving the incomplete lines just as they were.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, absolutely. These last many afterwards tried to finish, but failed owing to the difficulty that nearly all of the half lines in Virgil are complete in sense and meaning, the sole exception being in Aeneid Book 3, line 340, where you have quem tibi iam Troia. That's kind of the one kind of glaring omission, that half
quem
line.
tibi iam Troia.
Yep.
Yeah, no one knows what that means exactly. That's a great title, translated. A great title for a novel.
Yeah.
So there's an idea right there if you're out there looking for a novel to write.
Right.
I don't know, once you have the title.
That's a great loose thread to weave into a tapestry.
Oh, nicely done.
Yes. So, but thank goodness that they did not listen to Virgil.
That's right, because now we have the Aeneid.
Well, we have the Aeneid, right. So there is a tomb of Virgil near Naples, but it's... have you been to this?
I haven't been there, no. I didn't know it existed. I knew he was said to have been buried there.
Right.
I didn't know there was a marker.
Yeah, there's a large tomb there. It's one of a number in kind of this rock, kind of cut out of the rock there. But my sense is that it's kind of like that tomb of Cicero,
which we have seen,
which is of dubious provenance.
Yes.
So we don't know.
However, a really great story that we may have mentioned previously, strangely I can't remember the episode, is that when St. Paul landed, it's a medieval legend, when St. Paul landed at Puteoli or Misenum, on his way to Rome, he stopped off at Virgil's tomb. You know this story?
Oh, yeah.
And he knelt and he wept. He wept because he had been born just a little bit too late to convert Virgil to the Christian faith. So I have no doubt it's entirely apocryphal.
Sure.
But it captures so nicely the immense influence Virgil has had on Christians generally.
Absolutely. He achieves that title of a kind of virtuous pagan.
Absolutely.
Right? Largely because of Eclogue 4.
Yeah, the Sibylline poetry.
Right. Yeah.
So we're going to move on to someone not quite so commendable as Virgil.
No. This is Nero.
Nero the Zero.
Right. Who born in 37 and died by his own hand with a little bit of help.
68?
In 68, right?
At the age of what, 31, I guess?
31, when everything was just falling apart for
him.
Right. And so a bit from Suetonius here. I think just in the interest of time, I'm not going to read everything here.
Okay.
But I can summarize. And so he wakes up one morning and
Nero
and the Praetorian Guard have deserted him, and he's desperate for friends.
And a soda, probably.
And a soda, exactly. And no one would bring one to him. He was calling for a soda, right? And kind of his friend, his freedman, Phaon, he says, all right, you can come to my house. He's got a villa up in the suburbs between the Via Nomentana and the Via Salaria. He says, you can come and hide out here. And by this time, people are looking for him, and his days are absolutely numbered.
So this freedman Phaon is Greek? He's a Greek guy, probably?
I guess so.
Sounds like a Greek name.
Guessing by the name, yeah. Right. So he's hiding, and there's all kinds of people on his trail. I'll pick it up kind of halfway through the story from Suetonius. It says, when they came to the bypath leading to the villa, they turned the horses loose, and he, Nero, made his way amid brushes and brambles and along a path through a thicket of reeds to the back wall of the house, with great difficulty, and only when a robe was thrown down for him to walk on. Here the aforesaid Phaon urged him to hide for a time in a pit, from which sand had been dug, but he declared that he would not go underground while still alive. And after waiting for a while until a secret entrance to the villa could be made, he scooped his hand in some water to drink from a pool close by, saying, "This is Nero's distilled water."
What?
I don't know.
This is Nero's distilled water?
Like he's talking to himself in the third person, as you would expect Nero to do.
But why distilled water?
Well, I think he's saying that this is Nero's special water As he's digging it out of this disgusting pit, right? The fantasy is that this is I'm still.
Oh, he's out of his mind.
Yeah, he's out. Yeah.
So distilled here means just special for me.
Special for me. Right?
Got it.
Right. So I kind of have a selfish reason for including this story.
Oh, please.
Because one of my more recent times in Rome, I had kind of day off away from the students, and I decided
I'm sure it was heartbreaking to be away from the students.
It was terrible. I was weeping. But I had done a little bit of research, and the Villa of Faun has been found and excavated. And so, my affinity for death sites, I wanted to go where Nero had died.
Yes.
And so it took me the longest time to get up there and to find it, and none of the locals had any idea what I was talking about. Right. But I finally found it in this kind of forlorn park, and I had to do some fence hopping to get in there. And it was covered with dog droppings, but also brambles and briars, just like Suetonius describes. And I found the remnants of this villa.
Did you drink some of the distilled water?
No, there was some around, but I did not drink it.
That was wise.
Yeah, it was. Yes.
This is Jeff's distilled water.
Yeah. But it was cool to find it.
Yeah.
And to but it's in this surrounded by these broken fences and scattered with broken glass. And
don't mention the dog droppings again, please.
No, exactly.
Once was enough.
Once was enough. Right. So it's not a ruin that has seen any kind of preservation at all.
But a meaningful moment for you, I can tell.
Definitely, absolutely. Right.
Do you want me to read some of this from Suetonius? Right.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Tunc uno quoque hinc inde instante utquam primum se impendentibus contumeliis liberet, scrobem cordam fieri imperavit dimensus, ad corporis sui modulum camponiqua simul siqua inveni rentur, frusta marmoris et aquam simul ac ligna conferdri curando mox cadaveri, flanes ad singula atque identinem dictitans, qualis artifex pereo.
So this is the last moments of Nero.
Yeah, his final words.
His final words, right. So the translation, at last, while his companions one and all urged him to save himself as soon as possible from the indignities that threatened him, he bade them dig a grave in his presence, proportioned to the size of his own person, and at the same time bring water and wood for presently disposing of his body.
Why the water? Are they gonna clean him a little bit before they burn him?
I guess maybe he wants some more of his special distilled water.
I guess so.
Right? As each of these things was done, he wept and said again and again, "What an artist the world is losing." Now, what do you think of that as a translation of qualis artifex pereo?
It's very good.
You like that?
I'm not sure artist for artifacts. Has a little bit of a derivative ringy to it, but I like taking qualis as whata, right?
Whata, yep.
Maybe you could have said, such a connoisseur. I die, such a connoisseur.
Such a connoisseur, yeah.
Something like that.
Right.
Because the pereo is first person singular, right? But it's a good translation.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Right.
It's quite nice.
And in keeping with Nero's megalomania.
It's supposed to be highly melodramatic because
okay.
the stories of Nero are ridiculous, right? He wanted to be, there's this one story, he wanted to be a famous singer, right? So, he sang in Athens and at various competitions. So he would lay on the floor and have people put leaden plates. This maybe is from Suetonius, on his chest so that he would practice breathing under pressure.
That is from Suetonius.
So he would then develop a kind of operatic breath control.
Yeah.
And of course, there were many opportunities to just do him in such instances, because he was generally hated.
Right.
So, this melodrama, qualis artifex pereo.
I think Suetonius also tells us that he would, when he would perform in theaters, he would lock all the doors.
Right, so nobody could leave.
And then Suetonius talks about people like throwing themselves off the balcony rather than sitting through another song, right?
That's awful.
Yeah.
So we're going to cover Petronius, or we move on to Pontius Pilate?
I think we should probably move on to Pilate.
Okay.
Petronius is kind of an extension of Nero,
all right,
in some sense. But let's talk about Pontius Pilate.
All right.
I think this is really interesting.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please, no, take it up. What were you going to say?
I was going to say he's one of the few persons mentioned in the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed, right? Mm-hmm. You ever count the number of human beings mentioned in the creeds? It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So you've got Mary, of Christ himself as a human being. You have Pontius Pilate, who's mentioned, and then you have vague references to the living and the dead.
Right.
Communion of saints. Those are references to persons, mortals. But Pontius Pilate, right, is a villain of the story, at least of some sort, and he's mentioned explicitly in both of the creeds.
That's really striking. I'd never thought of that.
And someone just asked me a couple of weeks ago, why is Pontius Pilate the villain of the story, so to speak, in both creeds? I said, well, I had to think, but I think the reason is, first of all, to show that it's a specific historical event. The authors of the creed want to peg it to a particular time. It's like
makes sense.
saying during the Carter administration.
Right. Yeah.
Under Pontius Pilate. And I think the theological meaning is Christ, according to the Gospels, was condemned by civil authorities. So, there was some legal weight behind the conviction.
Gotcha. That's a really good answer.
Thanks.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
I'm not sure it's 100% accurate.
No,
but it is an answer.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it's also interesting to consider that historically Pontius Pilate has been a difficult figure to pin down. Right?
Yes.
So he's kind of a cipher when it.
Although there is an inscription.
There is
with Pilate's name on it.
Right.
Quite. I think the dating of it is contested, but the identification of it as Pilate is without controversy.
It's like from Caesarea, right? It's from
that's
the
right.
area.
It's from Palestine.
Palestine. Yep. Yeah, that's right. So there is epigraphical proof, but in terms of like his biography, a lot it's mostly these legends, right? And so there's lots of stories about Pilate in the New Testament Apocrypha, which would be another great episode.
Yeah, one of the theories about his name is that he was, from the region of Pontus in Asia Minor.
Oh yeah.
Possibility.
Yeah. So there's a lot of traditions about what happened to Pilate after the crucifixion. I mean, these stories almost become cliched, that these villainous figures, Romans and otherwise, they come around and they're converted, and they ultimately kind of martyred for their newfound faith.
Right.
So there's a number of these. I just picked one just because I thought it was interesting. It doesn't fall into that category of he comes out like virtuous pagan or whatever.
And this is the Mors Pilati.
Yes, and I could not for the life of me. I wanted to find the Latin text,
yes,
but I could not find an
That's all right.
version of it.
We got the title, the Mors Pilati, the death of Pilate, and you say it's 14th century.
14th century, right?
Okay,
and so at a time where lots of these legends were kind of popping up and becoming popular. So the story goes something like this. So the Emperor Tiberius, who was the emperor at the time of Christ's crucifixion.
Yeah, he was what, 14 to 37?
And then
I think so.
It's Caligula, right?
Right. So he's right between Augustus and Caligula.
Right. So the story is he's ill, and he's heard about this great healer, Jesus of Nazareth, and so he wants to bring Jesus to him so he could be healed.
All the way from Palestine to Rome.
Yep. And so he sends his emissary there, but he finds it's too late. Pilate has already executed.
Well, that's embarrassing for Pilate, isn't it?
Very, very embarrassing. And so he's Tiberius is very upset about this. And so his emissary, a guy by the name of Volusian, he finds Veronica instead. Who
is Veronica?
Veronica is she's said to the one who could have wiped Christ's face on his way to the cross, and then that cloth becomes kind of one of these holy magical relics.
Okay.
And
I heard the story. I didn't know the name.
Yes, so Saint Veronica. So apparently, one of the pillars in St. Peter's in the Vatican, the reliquary kind of holds this veil.
Oh, okay.
So she goes with this guy back to Rome with her veil, and with the kind of the magic powers of the veil, she heals Tiberius. Tiberius then brings Pilate before him. He's very upset for what he did to Jesus, but apparently Pilate is wearing part of Jesus' tunic that the Roman soldiers gambled for.
Oh, so Pilate got that in the end?
He got the tunic, and so that becomes kind of like almost a magical talisman. So Tiberius says, "I can't do anything while you're wearing the magic tunic."
It's like a superhero's cape.
Totally, exactly. Yeah.
I'm not finding this especially plausible.
No, it's not. No, but isn't it kind of awesome in its own weird kind of way?
Okay.
All right.
Maybe a little. No, I won't say it.
All right. So he says, I can't do anything to Pilate as long as he's wearing that. But a group of Christians gang up on him, strip the tunic off Pilate, and Tiberius then orders Pilate's execution.
So why would the Christians do that? Because they want Pilate punished, or they want the relic?
I think they want the relic, and maybe both. Maybe both here. Then Pilate, he says, I'm not going to let Tiberius do me, and takes a dagger, and he stabs himself with it before the execution can carried out. And then there's a bigger problem, is that they can't find everywhere he's buried, horrible things happen. And so they bury him over here, and there's things like the 10 plagues are kind of popping up, and because even the ground wants to reject Pilate's body.
That was another episode of ours, wasn't it? On the haunting houses? I don't remember.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
What was the? Well, if you don't say so yourself,
just ghosts to show you.
Just ghosts to show you.
Yeah.
That was your title. All the funny ones are yours.
So they're bouncing around there, keep digging up and reburying Pilate, but they finally find a place up in the Alps.
Interesting.
Near a Lake Lausania.
Yeah.
Lausanne, Switzerland.
Yes, I almost went there once on accident.
Really?
Yes.
How do you accidentally go to Lausanne?
Well, I would really like to visit Lausanne because Theodore Beza, theological hero of mine, was teaching Greek and Latin there for 10 years.
Oh.
But my son and I were getting on the train in Geneva, supposedly going to the airport so we could fly to Zurich, so we could fly to London. But we went north. And we're headed to Lausanne, or the wrong side, away from the airport.
Oh, no.
Time's going on, and we're munching on our hotel croissants. And I said to some Swiss guy, "Is this going to the airport?" He said, "No, you're going to Lausanne."
Did panic set in?
Moment of panic. Thankfully, we had headed out plenty early, so we got off at the next stop and
head back in the other direction.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Well, you were almost near where Pilate was finally buried.
Well, I'm glad I didn't go.
And so, according to the Mors Pilati, it was isolated enough that there were horrible things still happening, but there wasn't enough people around to really be bothered by it. Right.
So low population.
Yep.
There's that other legend of Pilate that he's forever washing his hands. You know that?
I don't know that one.
Well, this is
like Lady Macbeth.
This is featured in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Is that part?
I think so.
I don't remember that.
Maybe we'll have to
reference.
rewatch it.
Yes.
He's constantly washing his hands as a sign of remorse, trying to wash off the blood.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to do with his death, but it's an associated myth.
It's almost like a Greek underworld punishment. You're kind of filling out the leaky jar. Right?
Sisyphus.
He can never get the blood off his hands. Yeah.
Constantly cutting the AN video and never quite getting to the to the end.
To the end. Right.
Well, that just about wraps it up.
It does,
doesn't it?
Yep. So we got to get out of here.
What crazy title are you going to think up for this one, Dr. Winkle?
Well, the one I had in this paper, you gave me a kind of a meh. So I'm not even going to
I gave you the full stink eye.
You did give the stink eye.
You come up with some great.
So I got to come up with something funny.
I think you come up with some good ones. I've tweaked a couple, but you're really I want to give you full credit here.
Thank you.
Come up with some really funny titles. What are you going to do with this one?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
but the pressure's on. Right.
But we got to get out of here.
Yeah. So who do we got to thank here, Dave?
Well, we want to thank Mishka, who is our sound engineer.
Yes.
And puts us all together nicely. We want to thank Agricola, our videographer.
Yep.
Who not only films us and manages the lighting, and does he do makeup too?
He does.
He doesn't.
No, he does. No.
But he also cuts everything up and puts it in the nice final form so we can, serve it up to the people.
Yep.
Speaking of which, we'd like the listener to go to the YouTubes.
Yes.
YouTube.com/ad nauseum. Don't forget the
V.
And subscribe so you can watch some of our antics in the flesh, as they say.
Definitely. Get in touch with us. We'd love to give you a shout out.
We need some shout outs. Send them along, please. We would like to feature you in an episode. We need to thank Ken Tamplin, musician extraordinaire, qualis artifacts, you might say.
Yes, exactly. A great connoisseur.
That's correct. Yeah. Who gives us this wonderful music for the intro and the outro. We've got Scott Van Zen playing some screaming guitar. Lots of fun.
Yep. So send us a note to dave@adnauseum.com. Don't forget the V, or to me at jeff@adnauseum.com. Also, do not forget the V. Dave,
yes.
What's coming up next week?
Well, we teased the audience last week saying we were going to have Ken Bratt in the studio for an episode on the catacombs.
Right.
We had to reschedule that, so this week we gave them, Tales of the Dead.
Tales of the Dead.
Strange Ways to Die. We're going to try to get Ken in next week, and so episode 76 should be a trip to the catacombs of San Sebastian and San Callisto.
I'm excited about this. Ken, he knows more about this stuff than anybody I know.
Oh, absolutely.
It's going to be fantastic.
It's going to be great. Yep. And, Jeff, you have for us the gustatory parting shot.
I do. This comes from one of my favorite bands back in my kind of alternative music phase.
You were into the grunges and the emos and the...
I
thrashcore and things like that.
And this was more on kind of the outer orbit of the weird.
I'm just throwing out names. I don't really know what these musical genres are, right. even if they exist.
Yeah, so this was kind of on the odder edge of the alternative era in the early 90s of a band.
You like that kind of stuff.
I do. I did. This is a band called The Flaming Lips. Right. And so
sounds painful.
This is a song that was probably the closest thing that they ever had to a hit from a song called She Don't Use Jelly. And here's the lyrics. I know a girl who thinks of ghosts. She'll make you breakfast. She'll make you toast. But she don't use butter, and she don't use cheese. She don't use jelly or any of these. She uses Vaseline.
Yeah. It sounds awful.
Yeah, it does sound awful, but it's a great song.
And thanks for listening.
Thank you.